the fact that the BBC is saying stuff like this, reporting stuff like this, is definitely indicative of like the tide changing a little bit.
Okay, let's get more now on the Israeli government decision to close down the Al Jazeera TV channel in Israel. This has been happening throughout the day, and Sebastian Usher is our Middle East analyst at the BBC World Service. And we've had some news in just in the last half an hour or so, Sebastian, from Frank Gardner, our security correspondent in Jerusalem, who says that Israeli police have already raided the offices of the Qatar-based channel. And that was just within hours, wasn't it, of that decision?
That's right.
To shut it down. It seems very, very swift.
It is. It's swift, but it has been building for some time.
Oh,
this is something that the Israeli government, now this far-right government, has very much pushed for, and especially in the context of the Gaza war events since October the 7th.
Bro, I'll be honest with you. Even when you have guys like this on the BBC more frequently, like, that is indicative of the tide shifting, for the record. Like, BBC and the British government and all of the British propaganda machine has been so unimaginably, unconditionally in support of Israel's actions. Like, from the jump, nonstop, yeah, like insane shit. Okay? Absolutely insane shit. Like, worse than America. I've said this before. I said this during the Corbyn stuff, the way that they took down Corbyn. That guy that you saw that is currently the Israeli like foreign propaganda minister for the UK is literally one of the people that played a role in taking down Jeremy Corbyn as a labor friend to Israel. Okay, that guy that we just saw, the other guy, not this guy, that dude was straight up one of the instrumental people in claiming that Jeremy Corbyn was actually, you know, anti-Semitic because he was anti-Israel. Yeah, the fat guy that you just saw, Mr. Baron Harkonnen. Okay, so the fact that the BBC is saying stuff like this, reporting stuff like this, is definitely indicative of like the tide changing a little bit. The final bastion of Israel defense will be Germany. Once you start seeing German news actually adequately report what the fuck is going on the ground, that's when you know Israel has fallen. Okay, the order of operations is like the most contentious coverage against Israeli government atrocities will come from Israeli news sources, and then it's just America, England, Germany, going from most contentious to least contentious on the allied nation side and their propaganda.
Hamas attacks on Israel then, in which Al Jazeera, which Israel has accused for a very long time of being anti-Israeli, it's acted against its journalists. Journalists have been killed. I mean, most famously, 2 years ago, Shireen Abu Akleh, the star correspondent of Al Jazeera for the Arab service that they run in the occupied territories, was killed. Al Jazeera accused Israel 100% of having carried it out. Since then, Israel has said that it you know, the chances are that it was an accidental killing. So this showdown between Al Jazeera and Israel goes back a long way, but really this has become much stronger during the Gaza war, and Al Jazeera has been really the only international media outlet which has been able to keep its reporters on the ground.
Look, this question is a dangerous one, but it's important to describe. Where is it? Someone said, "How will anyone feel bad about the Jews after all of this?" I think the mods already clapped them. Okay. Looking at the actions of ISIS and going, how will anyone feel bad for Muslims as a whole, is Islamophobic. Okay. Looking at Israel's actions and saying, how will people ever feel bad about the Jews, is identical in the way of thinking. Okay. It is anti-Semitic. Okay. How is anybody supposed to feel sorry for the Jews after this? Sympathy for them as the only reason they've gotten so much for free. This is anti-Semitic thinking. If you have these kinds of reactionary attitudes inside of you, in your mind, you have to reconsider your stances. Okay? Move away from this kind of attitude. The reason why I say this is because this is exactly what I mean when I say Israel's actions leads to real anti-Semitism. Okay? Israel's actions lead to real anti-Semitism among people who otherwise would not be anti-Semitic or would not be considering the conversation on these boundaries. Okay? This is the reason why, even before October 7 and certainly since October 7, I consistently work tirelessly every single day in trying to explain to people that this has nothing to do with Judaism, that Jews are not a monolith, and that while Israel and Zionists certainly claims that they are doing all of these violent atrocities at the behest of the supposedly monolithic Jewish population, this is inherently anti-Semitic, and you must not be duped. You must not be duped into believing such a thing. And I do not care if you turn around and say, oh, well, dude, 80% of the Jewish population of Israel agree with the actions of Gaza. That's still a microcosm. That's still a minority of Jewish people globally. Okay? That's still a minority of Jewish people globally. The reality is there are far more Jews outside of Israel. And not only that, but you also have to remember that there are far more Christian Zionists than there are Jews as a whole. Okay? Do not take the bait. It is very difficult, especially if you're not Jewish yourself. It is very difficult, especially if you live in a distance from like any Jewish person in the United States of America, for you to understand that Jews are not a monolith. And I say this exact same thing about black people in general as well. It's just when you are not around any black people, you are more susceptible to the stereotyping in the media. If you're not around any Jewish people, you are more susceptible to looking at the messages from mainstream media and thinking, well, it seems like all the Jewish people are on board with this. It seems like this is a crime that is on their hands. Okay? Jews are not a monolith. Israel does not represent Jews at all or Judaism at all. And when you look at mainstream narratives that desperately seek to tie Judaism in an effort to defend Israel's actions, to claim anti-Semitism when someone is engaging in anti-Zionism, anti-Zionist sentiment, in a desperate attempt to provide shelter, provide cover for Israel's actions, it's very easy to feel like maybe all Jews do represent Israel, and Israel does represent all Jews. It's not the case. Okay? It's not. Israel cynically utilizes Judaism in a way to shelter themselves. Israel cynically will talk about the Holocaust in an effort to justify their atrocities. Does the comparison you make with Judaism and Islam change in any way, taking into account that Islam is not an ethnic religion, but Judaism is? No, it doesn't. Because ultimately, it ultimately doesn't matter. Because across the board, regardless of ethnic Judaism or regardless of like cultural Judaism or religious Judaism, Israel's actions are completely unmarried from all three of those aspects. And not only that, but also is antagonistic to the shared history of Jews, especially considering that Jewish history is almost always centered around resistance to apartheid, resistance to oppression, resistance to pogroms, being victim to such violent atrocities. And Jews now in the United States of America fall under the same exact demographic, the demographic opinions of the broader whole. Okay? That is precisely the reason why when you meet Jewish people under the age of 35, the likelihood that they are going to be anti-Zionist, the likelihood that they're going to be phenomenally critical of Israel's apartheid, to recognize that Israel is engaging in an apartheid or engaging in ethnic cleansing, is almost identical to anyone who is not Jewish in the United States of America under the age of 35. Whenever people talk about like, oh, 80% of Jews agree with Israel or love Israel or whatever, it is infinitely more complicated. However, media narratives, of course, in an effort to cynically shelter Israel's actions, will work against that. The media is literally participating in more anti-Semitic sentiment being raised, in more anti-Semitic sentiment being promoted in short-term thinking in an effort to, in the short term, defend Israel's actions. When the dust settles, all this will create is more anti-Semitism, real anti-Semitism, not the fake bullshit that the ADL promotes, like, oh, people are saying free Palestine, that's anti-Semitic. I'm talking like actual anti-Semitism, like the idea that Jews across the board are fully in favor of Israel's violent actions, that Jews are monolithic in their thinking. It's not correct. Lamau Hassan channeling the spirit of Trump, but the media is the enemy of the people. Wait, what do you mean? I mean, it's not me channeling Trump. Also, I'm an avid media watcher. I still believe that journalism is phenomenally important. I still literally rely on outlets like the Associated Press, outlets like CNN, and the actual original real coverage that they do. Okay? Without them, we would be completely in the dark. It's very important for the media to exist. It's very important for real journalism to occur. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to pick apart the obvious biases that they have in their narratives and the obvious neutral passive tones that they use when describing Israel's atrocities, yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, it still doesn't change the reality that there's a necessity for real journalism. And yes, even CNN sometimes engages in that.
Ceasefire broke. MJ Lee joins us now from the White House. That is significant timing. The White House made it clear that they did not know that Hamas would accept this. On the other hand, made it clear that the CIA director, William Burns, was appraised of each and every detail, minute by minute. What more are you learning about how, really the White House is viewing the events of the day so far?
Well, the official word that we are getting from the U.S. so far is that U.S. officials are still examining the details of this framework. And exactly as you said, that when President Biden...
I'm confused. Are they attacking Rafah right now or not? They are attacking Rafah, but there's a distinction to be made between aerial assaults and the potential invasion, on-the-ground invasion to follow such aerial assaults as it has in different iterations of this last siege on Gaza. While Eastern Rafah is currently being bombarded, and there are reports so far, unconfirmed, but there are reports so far of tanks moving in and potential clashes happening at the border of Eastern Rafah. We don't have official confirmation as of now, but it's not a stretch to assume that an on-the-ground invasion will be happening if it hasn't completely started already. We unfortunately need official confirmation from at least like someone like Emmanuel Fabian or an Israeli embedded reporter to figure out if the tanks are moving in or not.
Limited Rafah incursion by the Israelis. Take a listen. John, what is the president's position on a limited operation into Rafah?
We've been very clear that we don't support a major ground operation in Rafah. Operations in general that put at greater risk the more than 1 million people that are sheltering there. And
Bitch.
the question right now is a hypothetical.
Right, but you know that they are asking people in the area to evacuate, and the possibility of a limited Rafah operation is on the table. So I'm asking, does the president believe that?
I just don't get what the need is to say it's hypothetical at this point. Like, why are you still acting like the truth is not in front of our eyes?
That put at greater risk.
So you wouldn't support a limited operation into Rafah?
I think I've answered the question.
So I think that was clearly a reiteration of the U.S.'s position that they do not want Israel to go into Rafah. Bottom line, making clear of that repeatedly in recent
Guys, it's
weeks.
just a limited operation in the Rafah.
Of course, that they have yet to see a plan from the Israelis on how exactly they intend on protecting civilians, moving the 1.5 million people that are in this area right now out of that spot, and also making sure that they can be housed, that they can be fed, and making sure that they have all of the sort of humanitarian aid that they would need if an operation were to go forth. And I think it's also just worth reminding everyone that what President Biden has said recently is that a major military incursion into Rafah he would see as a crossing of a red line. Paula.
Yeah, MJ, and I appreciate you pressing him on that because we don't even know what we're looking at this hour in terms of the operation in Rafah, and it certainly has been a red line for the White House and many others, including King Abdullah, who met with Biden earlier today, who says they risk massacre there if they continue. MJ Lee for us at the White House, really appreciate it. Now, we do have more information into us about the Israeli response to this latest ceasefire proposal. Benny Gantz, a member of Israel's war cabinet, said Monday there were, quote, significant gaps between Israel and Hamas after Hamas accepted that Gaza ceasefire and the hostage deal that was mediated
Benny
by...
Gantz is also even hornier than Netanyahu, even in some instances, for military action.
Does not correspond to the
liberal
dialogue that had taken place so far with the mediators and has significant gaps. Despite this, he says we continue to turn over every stone and a delegation will go to Cairo. But also, I want to note that he added the military operation, as we were just discussing in Rafah, is also an integral part of our continued efforts and commitment to bring our hostages home. Remember that is a point of contention, whether or not this is actually helping to bring the hostages home. I will note that Mr. Gantz is perhaps more on the moderate side of the Israeli war cabinet, and many allies, including the United States, have been trying to appeal to him to make sure they are looking at each and every opportunity to make some kind of a deal with Hamas. Stay with us. We will be right back with more news after a break.
This is necessary is how it would be sold. Yeah. Do you think Israel attacking Rafah on Holocaust Remembrance Day is a strategic decision to strengthen the anti-Semitism narrative against the opposition to Israel's actions? I mean, I don't think that they're like gearing up for anti-Semitism allegations beyond the fact that they have been desperately trying to do that since day one. UCSC students attacked by police and border patrol possibly there. Yeah. By the way, I want to show you guys something as well. Okay. This right here is so damning. This conversation at the McCain Institute is happening, I believe, 2 days ago now. Okay. Here's Anthony Blinken talking about Israel's PR.
Why has the PR been so awful? I know that's not your area of expertise, but you have to have some thoughts on that, which is, I mean, as you've said, why has Hamas disappeared in terms of public perception? An offer is on the table to have a ceasefire, and yet the world is screaming about Israel. It's like, why aren't they screaming about Hamas? Accept a ceasefire.
Yeah, thanks, Mitt Romney. Yeah, why isn't the world screaming about Hamas? Well, I don't know. Maybe because Israel's the one killing a metric ton of people, you know? Only one party here is doing unimaginable baby murder, and it ain't Hamas. So in comparison to Israel's actions, Hamas looks like angels here, okay? Israel has done so much more, so much. Israel's done 10x, 20x October 7th since October 7th. Perhaps that's the reason why the world is like, hey, we should stop this baby murder a little bit. You know, maybe we should dial it back. Hamas messed up. Yeah, totally. They did. You're right. Hamas messed up by getting the apartheid state to create apartheid conditions before Hamas ever even existed. I can't believe that they just time traveled and created a justification for Israel to exist as an apartheid regime. Hamas was the reason why Israel officially declared itself to be a Jewish ethno-state. Hamas is the reason why Israel actually started settling aggressively in the West Bank and continued its aggressive settlement operations. Hamas is the reason why all of that has happened before Hamas is not the reason why Hamas exists to begin with, but instead it was Hamas's doing. The Native American prop is doing so much work in this conversation. Oh my God, I didn't even know. No. Really? Are you making one of your jokes? I'm being sarcastic if you couldn't notice. Hamas is not the reason for why Israel is an apartheid state. Hamas is not the reason for the 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour. Okay? Deeply stupid adult here that has never had a second thought about politics beyond what I learned from my awful AmeriFat parents. Let me explain this to you about how Hamas caused all of this. Yeah. These guys are so far up their own asses that they're oblivious to the top of the hour ad break. You shouldn't be. It's coming right now. Okay? For $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime, you will be able to avoid the top of the hour ad break, for the record. Cool jacket. Thank you. It was an ASOS jacket that I got like a decade ago. So I don't know if they sell it any longer. Okay. And I got it for free too. What's with this fuck around and find out mentality with this thing in particular, yet not Ukraine? Not that both causes aren't just. Russia and Israel are the same in this case, but it's weird to me how different the reactions are for both of those people when technically they're the same. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? It's because we have interests in Ukraine. Ukraine are our allies. Ukraine is our weapon to wield against Russia, our foreign adversary. Israel, on the other hand, are our allies in this circumstance against, you know, Islamic radicalization or whatever enemy we've decided to utilize, to weaponize at the behest of our imperial interests in this resource-rich region. Thank you, 34MKD50, for gifting 50 big ones, allowing 50 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
Bring home the hostages. It said it's all the other way around. I mean, typically the Israelis are good at PR. What's happened here? How have they and we been so ineffective?
Why are you showing this? Your existence as a light one shit is like literally old news from like 2 years ago, chatter. Anyway, I got to get back to this. I want to hear what Mitt Romney has to say about good PR for Israel. What would you say to a Zionist who claims Israel equals Ukraine in this situation instead of Israel equals Russia as the aggressor? Wait, what? The only similarity between Israel and Ukraine in this circumstance is not on moral boundaries at all, but simply on the State Department side. That's it. The State Department is aligned with Ukraine. The State Department is aligned with Israel. That's it. It begins and ends there, the similarities. Israel, in its offensive bombing campaign in Gaza, has quite literally taken away resources from Ukraine, taken away public support from Ukraine. Ask them who the militarized superpower is in this conversation. The idea that like Ukraine and Israel share any similarities beyond the fact that like America gives them both weapons is ridiculous.
The Israelis are good at PR. What's happened here? How have they and we been so ineffective at communicating?
It's so funny because like I don't think many Israelis would even agree with that. For the record, Israel is the reason why Ukraine doesn't have an Iron Dome. That's right. That's another good point that I always mention. Benjamin Netanyahu personally refused to allow Ukraine to have an Iron Dome. Not only that, but also after Zelensky asked for it, but also the irony here is that Israelis themselves are pushing Z. A shit ton of Israelis push Z. A shit ton of Russians are also pro-Israel. This is something that often gets forgotten. There is a shit ton of Russians living in Israel. Russian Jews that left the USSR, that moved to Israel, and still very much so are pro-Russia. So it is pretty funny when people are like, yeah, Israel and Ukraine are similar. What? Putin is pro-Palestine, right? Totally, man. Totally. Israel cannot engage in bombing campaigns in Syria, which it regularly does, without Russia's go-ahead. Okay? Israel could not allow Azerbaijan to do whatever the fuck it wants in the region, again, without Russia's go-ahead. The idea that Israel and Russia are not aligned is really silly. Of course, Israel and Russia are aligned, just like Israel and Recep Tayyip Erdogan's administration are aligned. Recep Tayyip Erdogan will claim that they are stopping all trade to Israel as a consequence of the political pressure that is mounting inside of Turkey internally, and because of Erdogan's consistent efforts in maintaining this position as though he's like Mr. Caliphate, and yet they will simply trade by way of Azerbaijan. Turkey will use Azerbaijan as a proxy to continue its trade with Israel. Turkey will not shut off the energy faucet into Israel. Turkish pipelines is how Israel gets its oil and gas from Azerbaijan. Turkey hosting Hamas leaders doesn't change that reality. What exactly do you mean that Netanyahu prevented Ukraine from having an Iron Dome like Israel's or like setting up their own? America wanted to, or not America wanted to, but Zelensky wanted the United States to send the Iron Dome, because America doesn't just have an Iron Dome in Israel. America also has those weapons on their own as well. This move was blocked by Benjamin Netanyahu. He claimed that the Iron Dome technology would not be allowed to be shipped to Ukraine because of fears that Iran will get access to this when Russia inevitably takes it over. Is Erdogan's statement today bullshit then? Everything Erdogan says is bullshit. Russia supports the Syrian regime, so in a way you could say they're anti-Israel. Russia's actions, or Vladimir Putin's actions specifically, are just pro-Vladimir Putin and nothing else. Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu are very much aligned and have time and time again collaborated specifically with Israel's actions in the region that go beyond Gaza, that go beyond the West Bank. Russia plays both sides of the conflict because it creates another pressure point for breaking apart American hegemonic power in the region. So Putin is pro-Iran and pro-Israel. Is this normal behavior for countries? Yes. So is Xi Jinping. People get duped in this regard. They don't look at the broader allegiances. Eric Toller of the New York Times is now saying that reports continue of military vehicles entering Gaza towards Rafah via the southeastern border with Israel. Along with these witness accounts, there are unverified reports of Israeli military vehicle fire near the destroyed Gaza airport about a mile from the border. It's kind of nuts how many people have come back. You think their minds are changing, or are they just hating? I think some people's minds are changing, yes. And some people are just coming back because there's increased interest once again. It's a combination. But overall, I do think that a lot of people that originally thought that my position was impossible to contend with are now coming to the realization that perhaps it wasn't wrong at all. So, China both advocates for a two-state solution and says it's committing a genocide while also continuing trade relations and weapon shipments. It's just realpolitik. A country saying Israel's going too far doesn't make it pro-Palestinian inherently. Yes. Just like Turkey sending steel, sending cement, concrete, and other goods and commerce, engaging in Israel, engaging with Israeli trade, all tools for the Israeli genocide, all tools for the Israeli apartheid, and doing that through potentially an Azerbaijan proxy, does not change the statements that Erdogan makes publicly. Russia is not sending weapons to Israel, but Israel is sending weapons to Ukraine. I don't think Russia is sending weapons to Israel. This doesn't change the reality. Turkey doesn't send weapons to Israel either. Right now, Turkey's not sending weapons to Israel. I will tell you this much, okay? My understanding of the way that regional actors operate was greatly influenced by what I saw, what I heard, and what I saw in the aftermath of Mavi Marmara, where a Turkish humanitarian aid ship, okay, went through the Israeli blockade, the inhumane, cruel, unjustifiable Israeli blockade, to give humanitarian aid to people in Gaza. And Israel's retaliation to such actions that it considered to be unjust, even though their blockade was unjust, okay, was to drop ship commandos into this ship and kill 10 people with machine guns. Okay. Now, when I saw that, and I considered that to be unconscionable and a gross violation of human rights, I remember at the time Recep Tayyip Erdogan's statements. He was very critical of Israel. He never stopped being critical of Israel. He said there was the famous 1 minute moment. I think it was in Davos or something. Okay. And yet simultaneously, that was a big deal in Turkey. Like, he's standing up to Israel. Look at our glorious leader. Okay. Except in that time, it was all political theater because Turkey and Israel's trade relations were not harmed in any meaningful capacity. And Turkey still continued to train Israeli pilots in its NATO bases inside of its borders. So how can you say that you are against Israel? How are you acting like you're mad at Israel when you were still at the time training Israeli pilots that would then go and blow up Gaza. That would then go and maybe even in certain instances kill your own citizens doing humanitarian aid. It's pure politics. It's pure theater. Just like the current relations with Israel in Turkey, as far as I understand it, hasn't changed all that meaningfully, and Turkey will still most likely continue. Turkey will still most likely continue its trade with Israel, okay, by way of an Azerbaijan proxy. It's just simply good politics for Recep Tayyip Erdogan. That's it. This is a means of making himself look good in the eyes of the Turkish population, who has been incredibly critical of Erdogan, especially when it comes to its mishandling of Israel's actions in Gaza and maintaining a relationship. There were news reports that uncovered that Recep Tayyip Erdogan's son, who's a shipping magnate, by the way, was personally delivering supplies to Israel with his own logistics company. Okay. This and many other instances created a shit ton of internal pressure for Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and that is precisely the reason why he is desperately trying to do what he does best, which is propaganda. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, albeit a watermelon salesman, is a very good propagandist. Okay? Very smart propagandist. He is very good at positioning himself in a way that makes it look like he's always standing against the broader Western imperialist forces, when this motherfucker is still managing NATO bases with American nukes in them. Of course, a country that is trusted with American nukes, that is a part of NATO, is never going to be truly anti-America. You are out of your mind if you think that that is the case. However, Recep Tayyip Erdogan will still engage in I guess not trade brinksmanship, but like he will go and he will go and you know, get Russian defense systems. He'll go back and forth on the F-35s that were supposed to be given to Turkey, even though the F-35s used to be built in Turkey. At least a part of them was built in Turkey, in Turkish facilities. It's just pure politics. Abi Amerika neden İsrail destekliyor ki, bir faydası yok. Faydası yok. Var. Onlar için var. Onlar varmış gibi görüyorlar. Armenia has pro-EU government. Why would Russia help Armenia on anything? Why is France still buying Azerbaijani gas? Wait, what? This doesn't go against what I was saying. That is the reason why Russia doesn't give a shit about what happens to Armenia, even though for years and years, Russia was the major reason. Russia and Turkey were the major reasons as to why the Karabakh situation had not unfolded in the way that it did. They were basically holding the Azerbaijan government at bay, and post Russian invasion of Ukraine, they were like, all right, fuck you guys then. Oh, you want to be a part of EU? You want to play with the EU guys? Well then, okay, there you go. Have fun. What's up, Austin Shaw? Anyway, Armenia is weak as but is Christian, so true. Anyway, let's continue.
They've been reporting essentially.
Let's get back to Al Jazeera being shut down officially in the state of Israel. The greatest, most moral, best democracy, definitely not fascist.
24 hours a day on its Arab language channel and its English language channel. And again, that's something which the Israeli government is very much against and believes is essentially acting as a mouthpiece for Hamas. And they've said that explicitly. They've even accused Al Jazeera staff of collaborating with Hamas. So this announcement today, which was made by the Prime Minister Netanyahu.
I mean, they have killed a bunch of Al Jazeera journalists and then claimed that they were Hamas. So it tracks. You know what I mean? They literally, everyone is Hamas. UN is Hamas. Who isn't Hamas? This calls into question the Samson option and what the justifications could be in a nuclear future. You know what I mean? It's like everyone is Hamas but me. Maybe I'm Hamas too. Inside of us, there's this little Hamas living. Yeah, I did see the Republicans in the Senate threatening The Hague. I said we are the bad guys earlier this morning when I saw that. It is insane. We're going to cover that too. Don't worry. Here it is. We'll get to it in a second. Yeah.
was followed very swiftly by the communications minister saying he'd signed it. And as we've seen, actually, the communications minister posted video of the raid within a couple of hours of this happening. So the powers that Israel has over Al Jazeera to confiscate its broadcasting equipment, to close its offices, and to block access to it on satellite and its websites. Now, what we're hearing from Israel is that that has happened, that it's no longer obtainable by satellite or cable in Israel. But there's other ways of doing it. And again, as Frank was saying, you can get it on Facebook now. Very difficult in this day and age, obviously, to completely close down access to a network like Al Jazeera.
I wonder, in your analysis, what do you think this means in terms of people's views of Netanyahu? We have seen more protests, haven't we, in recent months? But for the people in Israel, in particular, what do you think their perception will be of this? I'm thinking more in terms of free speech.
Yes, no, I understand that. I mean, I think in terms of the critics of Netanyahu who date back before October the 7th, who basically went on the streets in hundreds of thousands every Saturday to protest against what they saw as a move by his government to close down the ability for the judiciary to take positions against what the government wanted to do, they would say this is another attack on free speech. I think many Israelis, though, would see it as this is a time of war. Al Jazeera, I think many people, if they do watch it, would see it as some kind of propaganda. They would see it as taking too strongly a pro-Palestinian and anti-Israeli position. So I don't think it'll change particularly the way that Israelis see Netanyahu. If they already see him as someone who's opposed to free speech, who's opposed to democracy in Israel, then they will see this as another sign of it. But for many others, it will be mixed up with this feeling, which is, you know, this is a time of war. Just as you have many Israelis who are very much against the way that the war has been fought by the Israeli government and the Israeli military and the casualties on the Palestinian side, they're not necessarily against the fact of a war.
Only Israeli human rights and press freedom orgs care about this, not much from the broad civilian population. Yeah, I doubt, that does make sense. Dude, you know what's crazy? I never ended up finishing this dumbass thing. I don't think. Did I end up watching the whole video of Mitt Romney? Oh my God. Oh my God, something is wrong with my brain. This Generation Z brain has broken me as well. I wanted to watch this as far as like why Israeli propaganda is failing. Just two guys having a chat.
Why has the PR been so awful? I know that's not your area of expertise, but you have to have some thoughts on that, which is, I mean, as you've said, why has Hamas disappeared in terms of public perception? An offer is on the table to have a ceasefire, and yet the world is screaming about Israel. It's like, why aren't they screaming about Hamas? Accept the ceasefire, bring home the hostages. It said it's all the other way around. I mean, typically the Israelis are good at PR. What's happened here? How have they and we been so ineffective at communicating?
Why can't we cover up? Why can't we cover up the insane war crimes that Israel is engaging with unimaginable frequency? What is wrong, bro? Mehmet Walshola, I'm gonna literally ship you out. Okay, I get it. You are making a beautiful point about China. Okay, I got it. Jesus Christ. Iranian German chatter going crazy. Stop! I'm repausing again.
The realities there, and
we're on an intravenous feed of information with new impulses.
Communicating the realities there, and
we're on an intravenous feed of information with new impulses, inputs every millisecond.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's not because there's new impulses and inputs every millisecond. It's because Israel is lasering a new Palestinian baby every millisecond. That's probably what it is. Okay? It's not like people are replaying the same atrocities over and over again. Well, Israel is, October 7. But the Palestinian side has a new fresh hell that they have to contend with and try to show the rest of the world pretty much every day. So much so that as far as Israel's atrocious behavior goes, there are chatters in here that have been following every single day of this conflict every single day for 200 plus days now. And yet I'm certain that they would be in awe if I were to tell you, I don't know, a new thing that they probably haven't even heard about that Israel's done, like the quadcopters, right? There was reports about using crying baby sounds to like snipe out Palestinians that run out of the rubble. It's like when you hear about the goon squad for the first time, you're like, what? What do you mean they're extracting semen from dead IDF soldiers? Like, that's insane. It's just like there is so much that Israel has done, and so much Israel's done before October 7th as well, but so much it has done since. Okay? So much it has done since that is so unimaginably freak-like. Just freakish behavior. Freakish behavior that someone like myself, who is definitely more educated on the matter than the average person, especially the average person in America, even I sometimes go, that seems like an anti-Semitic thing that you're just saying right now. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way you're just making that up, right? Only to find out that no, they aren't making that up. Holy shit. Felix Biederman of the Chapo Trap House had a funny bit about this when talking about the lab mice that Zionist counter-protesters at UCLA tried to unleash upon the pro-Palestinian peaceful encampment. He said that it's literally, if someone were to approach him and ask him, if someone were to approach him and be like, did you hear that Zionist counter-protesters that are defending Israel went and like released lab mice that had like inoculation marks on them, like potentially diseased lab mice? He would go, okay, that's a little bit anti-Semitic. I feel like you're making this up. I feel like you're being anti-Semitic with this conspiracy theory. It is akin to literally blood libel. Like, oh yeah, Jews are drinking the blood of Christian children. You know what I mean? They're bringing about the bubonic plague here. That's what it feels like. When I hear new things, I'm like, I have to investigate this because this seems insanely anti-Semitic. That's the reason why people are like, what the fuck is Israel doing? The "Are you Polish" line went so hard. Yeah. So the widow can have children? Yeah, dude, we know why the goon squad is extracting semen from dead IDF soldiers, brother. We know. The question is, why aren't they nutting beforehand? I did not think. I mean, there's a couple different questions. One, why are people so obsessed with maintaining the lineage and having as many children as possible, Jewish children specifically inside of Israel? What is this? What's up with this demographic concern of Israel? That seems kind of an odd thing. The Israelis stealing organs felt anti-Semitic as well. Yes. Yeah, we have to maintain bloodlines to maintain our demographic ethno-state. Demographic Jewish majority ethno-state. Weird. Okay.
And of course, the way this is played out on social media has dominated the narrative. And you have a social media ecosystem environment in which context, history, facts get lost, and the emotion, the impact of images dominates. And we can't discount that. But I think it also has a very, very, very challenging effect on the narrative.
Yeah, a small parenthetical point, which is some wonder why there was such overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcasts. So I'd note that's of real interest, and the president will get the chance to make action in that regard.
That's why it's so funny when like my naysayers will criticize me and be like, Hasan is doing conspiracy theories about why they're pushing to ban TikTok. And it's like, bro, they literally have been saying it openly. I was also careful at first about running with narratives such as, oh, they're banning TikTok because they can't control it. Like, that's a major factor, a major role in this. Like, oh, they can't control TikTok, and like all the you know, messaging that TikTok allows that is pro-Palestinian is hurting the PR operations, and you know that's why they're working to ban TikTok. And it's like, they keep saying it. They keep saying it over and over again. Like they're taking victory laps. They're like, yeah, look at how well we banned TikTok. Look at how well we're doing. It's ridiculous. Well, would you look at that? As Israel prepares to enter Rafah, Hamas just released a statement that they reversed their decision and they now accept the Egyptian ceasefire deal. Cowards. I hope Israel says no and finishes them off. Thanks, Hillel Fuld. Great take from Hillel Fuld over here, demanding blood. Because he doesn't care. He does not care. Israel will never know peace. To use the words of Golda Meir, Israel will never know peace until they learn to love their children more than they hate Arabs and Palestinians. Pure projection from Golda Meir when she said the exact opposite about Palestinians. Israel says the same shit about Palestinians? Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying it's pure projection. Sources tell me the tanks have reached the Rafah crossing and has fired several shells on the buildings on the crossing. Here's the Al Jazeera English correspondent saying East Rafah is now under heavy Israeli bombardment, including Rafah border buildings. Hind Hudari says 3 Israeli tanks are stationed 200 meters away from the Rafah crossing.